Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Habitat Update episode 6, the podcast about entrepreneurs and Japan from the Kansai area of Japan with the cities Kobe, Kyoto, Osaka and more. My name is Tugi. Today here with me once more, Sabrina. Hey Sabrina, thank you for joining me. How are you?
Hi Tugi, thank you for inviting once more. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Great, thank you. Today we have a interesting show. We're going to talk about coworking and coworking spaces and infrastructure facility named Usine IO in Paris.
Oh yeah, that was one of my big discoveries last year when I had a chance to visit France.
Yeah, well, more about that later.
Okay.
Let's start. So, how's everything going? How is it going with the new Kyoto Makers Garage?
It's been a crazy 2 months.
Why?
We've organized a lot of events and new members and trying to settle down. You know, we built and they came, but now we have to take care of all details and managing a co-working space, a maker space. It's a long task, so it takes time. We'll get there.
I can imagine. But you mentioned events. Maybe, let's mix things up. Let's jump right into the past events we visited, no? I've been to some of the events you had recently.
Mm-hmm.
The first Spring Singapore delegation event. What was that about?
It was an official mission organized by Spring Singapore.
Last week,
last Friday. So Spring, it's a Singaporean government agency in charge of supporting startups and connecting startups to global players. So they contacted us a while ago and they organized a trip to Japan. In Kansai, specifically Kyoto, they chose to do an event with local startups. So Makers Bootcamp was in charge of contacting startups and invited them. So we made a matchmaking session. It was very interesting, very productive. And for me, you can see straight from their introductions the way that why Singapore is considered one of the hubs for innovation for startups. They are very focused, straight to the point, extremely professional, perfect English skills, and their pitch is like, it's been there shaped, and that's something that makes a lot of difference.
it's true. I think some of the Japanese participants, they might almost felt a little bit uncomfortable because the Singapore delegation was never very open, like very talking to people and like kind of like not waiting for things to happen, but just do it, right?
Yeah,
this is not so common here. People tend to follow schedules and everything in procedure.
Yeah, I think I would say the protocol for certain, culturally speaking, for certain countries, and I include myself on those countries because I'm from Brazil. So over there, if you talk about a startup event or a matchmaking session, people will be way more into like improvisation and trying to be more spontaneous and do whatever they want. It's really hard to like set a schedule and make people stick to it.
Yes.
In Japan, in the opposite, it's everything more organized, planned, control, and then I think the audience tends to feel more comfortable to be guided in the tour or in an event. So I think it's a little bit of both. It's interesting to have some organization, planning, and understand what the agenda is and what the moments would be better to talk and the moments that would be better to hear or listen to what the others were saying. But personally, I was very comfortable and I could feel a very international and casual conversation, and most of the startups were super happy. I wouldn't say anyone felt uncomfortable, at least not.
Not uncomfortable, but just like not used to it in terms of like
but maybe
usual Japanese style events.
That's good. That's good to show that you can also be casual. Oh yeah,
definitely. No, I don't say it's bad.
Productive and so on.
It helps people. Like, I mean, if you're always in your system, you don't see things. So these are opportunities to see how others react and organize events. So it might help for others, locals, to open up and try new things.
But apparently our meetup was one of the most casual and the ones they had more freedom to improvise. So basically they were very excited to being able to...
You had another meetup, which then was a little bit more formal. That was yesterday. You had the Monozukuri Hub meetup. Was it the first one after a while now again, all right?
First one in our new Kyoto Maker's Garage, our new space.
Yes. The topic was failure.
Failure, which was very interesting. First of all, because it was kind of hard to find startups willing to talk about their failures. Actually, I'm writing an article about it. And second, because many attendees were really interested because of the topic.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't see a lot of those events in Kansai at least. Calling startup to talk about failure. So you see the ones that are trying to give you how to be successful and never how to share failure. So the idea is sharing stories of failure, and that's something that is missing in Japan, more specifically in Kansai.
True. It's also a cultural thing.
Yeah, failure is
bound to the Japanese culture. Failure is unacceptable, right?
But again, we had a German speaker joining a brief panel discussion, and we were exactly discussing the similarities between European startup ecosystem and the Japanese ones. As interesting as it might sound, not long ago, at least Germany and a few other hubs like France, they were not comfortable to talk about failures either. But basically, the mindset had to change once they realized that if you don't celebrate the failure, you don't set people free to try something new. So you lose a lot of talents who could be qualified to join new projects, basically because they are concerned, afraid of sharing their problems, and they never show up anymore. So basically, that's a good way. No one is taking care of the ones who are failing. So if you focus only on the successful entrepreneurs, you are missing a very, very important point of
there are a lot of good lessons hidden in failure. That's how you learn, right? I don't have to tell the audience. I think everyone knows that. It takes some courage to admit it and to talk about it.
Of course.
Anyway, you mentioned the German speaker. I assume it was Thorsten.
Yeah, Thorsten.
Thorsten, what's his full name? Thorsten. Let me look it up. Tell me about Thorsten, because he had another event that was yesterday. We couldn't attend though. It was in Osaka, in the Wonder Lab Osaka, as
at Panasonic headquarters.
Panasonic headquarters.
But they broadcast, so I watched the session. It was very interesting. I think Thorsten has been working as an innovation consultant.
Here we go, Thorsten Fischer.
Yeah, well, he's
an innovation consultant here in Tokyo.
Yeah, and he's been bridging Europe and Japan, and he sees a lot of opportunities for Japanese large corporations to understand better and see the strengths of startups. Right now, it's too focused on the weakness and the risks that you assume once you're working with startups. Here, his point is they are both good and bad sides, but if both sides try to focus on the good side, it's a win-win collaboration. So that was his entire vision, and which we all agree. But he has more. He's been showing very specific cases of startups that succeed thanks to collaborations with large corporations, and also the ones that have failure, and then thanks to the support of large corporations, they could continue in the business and really innovate. So startups have, can have many issues, but they have two things that large corporations don't have. They have a lot of passion, so people are very passionate about what they are doing. And second, time to the market. They are really faster. They can move.
Agility, as you can like.
Yeah.
Fail fast, be agile, and all these buzzwords.
No, I'm not talking about better words.
No.
Buzzwords. I'm talking about daily life work.
They come from something, right?
So in a large corporation, you have a team of 100 people working in the same project.
That's what I mean. You cannot be flexible enough.
So in a startup, you have 1, 2, or maybe 3 people, and then timing is really the main advantage of startups.
You have to be reactive.
Yes.
To trends and
exactly.
To new news and topics. Well, yeah, that was very interesting, and I actually watched part of his meetup presentation online too. That was great, actually, that they streamed it.
Yeah, and I like the fact that such a large corporation, a global brand like Panasonic, is leading this conversation and actually inviting others to go.
It's a good example, and I hope more will follow here in the area. Let's move on. Okay, we had a couple of meetups at GVH Osaka, meetups and events. One of them was GVH Meetup edition 12, I guess, with Mark Kato, CEO at Silicon Valley Japan Business Consulting. He's based in Silicon Valley, traveling a lot between the two countries, obviously by the name of his consulting, right? And trying to help Japanese and American companies to initiate and expand their businesses in this or the other country. That was very interesting. It was more of a workshop and not a lecture combined, where he was talking about how you write like business mails or like how to approach people within startups or in business, like in places like the States or in Japan. Whereas in Japan, you kind of like take some time to set up the whole email, right? With like, hey, how are you? I hope you had a great week despite the weather, and you set up the whole atmosphere basically.
By the way, even though it's in my signature, let me repeat my company name and my name.
Exactly. It's like, and then he brought the example of another. He said like, oh, hey, hi, we met last week, was great. So about that presentation, here you find the files attached, ba 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 ba. And then he told people like what to pay attention to, how you can be more efficient writing these emails without being like that abrupt, but still avoiding kind of like too elaborate emails. That was great. It was held in Japanese for a Japanese audience, obviously. And then after that, we had at the weekend, the final day, the demo day of the GVH Startup Camp 2017. We had 4 teams. They presented their projects. You've been there.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Being based in Osaka, it's not surprising that they are all food-related topics. So I think all startups. I think that the mentoring sessions were very, very productive and add a lot of value to the entrepreneurs. Because I've noticed with my lack of Japanese skills, right? All the content was in Japanese, but from an overview, I saw a lot of visual references, not many details into the slides, and visual references and like ideas or less kanji. And that was a lot of good things for a traditional Japanese style of presentation. And also they were not so focused so much into the technical parts. They were really trying to show the value of each one. And this is really good to realize like they are focused on solving problems, going straight to the point and showing the value proposition, including some benchmark in that area they were trying to approach. So really,
that's great.
And demo, and 1 out of 4 had a demo.
It was a mock-up. It's
a prototype. It doesn't matter. You have a demo. You're trying to show the minimal execution about your idea. So it was not. No, I was not surprised that was the winner. And
he won. Yeah.
And I voted for him basically because he was the only one not showing ideas. He was showing some concrete.
It was also his background. Like, the topic was about food, and he works as a cook, right, as a chef, and so he had some experience, and he created this video just showing his idea, and I guess that stuck with many people. That's why he won. His name, Toshiki Miki, very young and energetic guy. I assume we'll see more of him around here. I hope so, because he has what it takes to push new projects, and he's very creative.
Yeah, hopefully more people will get inspired by his example and will prototype. That's a very important part. That I'm like that. I struggle a little bit to execute because I tend to plan too much. So once you're a startup, you cannot afford to plan too much. You have to execute.
Okay, good. That was more or less all the past events we had recently. Real quick outlook to what is around the corner. October 20 to 22nd, this weekend, we have the startup weekend in Kobe.
Oh, amazing.
Then October 22nd, it's a Sunday, I guess. In Osaka, we have the Coffee and Code Conundrum, it's called. It's basically just a very casual coffee meetup of coders. Everyone is invited, beginners as well as more experienced people, just to sit together, help each other, or present their projects and so on.
I think Meetup has great coding for beginners events and very casual. Not many. The entrance level is very low. Like that means everyone with a beginner zero knowledge can join and actually have fun, which is the most important part.
And people are open for that, so they don't like shame you, blame you because you are not a hacker.
Yeah.
But instead they try to help you and show you new ways and like bring you one step forward. And then next week, October 27th, Friday, we have the Hacker News Kansai meetup, the monthly meetup. This time it's going to be in Kyoto. The location is not fixed yet, but if you follow them on meetup.com, I'm sure they'll update it very soon. And beyond that, I want to mention two more events. November 9th, we have another GVH meetup at GVH Osaka. And it's going to be about bridging Japan, Singapore, and the rest of Asia. That's the title. We'll have the CEO and founder of Basava Creation, Tom-san, living in Singapore, used to live in Kyoto, and is trying to kind of like support the network of Japan and Singapore through events and like other business connections and activities. And then one more thing, of course, the Hakka Hakka, the innovation startup event taking place every year. Next will be February 18th. Startup registration to join the pitch contest until October 31st. So this month, you still have some time.
Wait, what are the startup? What is the requirement?
The requirement is basically no requirements. Everyone can apply, but preferably you have more chances if you are in the areas of digital health, travel tech, and smart cities.
Okay.
Is a bit the focus.
Hot topics, yeah.
Yeah, these are the main topics. You can apply. One of your team, if elected, one of the team gets basically the whole trip paid. Can attend the pitch contest and meet people, network, and if you win, you get, I think, another set of tickets to come back to Japan. But you find everything on their webpage. Great. I think let's move on to what we teased a little bit in the beginning. Usine IO. We had a very for me, it was a very spontaneous visit of Gary Cige, the co-founder of Usine IO in Paris. And well, let's see what he had to say. Hi everyone, we are here now with Gary Cige.
Yes.
From Usine IO, straight from France, Paris.
Indeed.
Welcome to Osaka. Welcome to Tokyo, Japan.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Asia. You can spend like welcome to the globe. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. And Gary, let's jump right in. Please introduce yourself and what are you doing? What is Usine IO? What are you doing here?
Okay. So my name is indeed Gary Cige. I'm one of the founder, and we are three of us of Usine IO. Usine IO is a service that is based in Paris, but we work with companies around the globe. What we do is that we support and give guidance to any hardware-based project leader from his idea till the manufacturing, going through the prototyping phase, the design for manufacturing phase. So we are a team, we do that with a team of around 20 people, mostly engineers. We give them access to expertise. We give them access to an industrial network. It could be a teacher from a university specialized in laser. It could be factories in Asia, in Eastern Europe, in the US. We give them access to content, so we have workshops around import-export, around custom management, around project management. But we give them access to an infrastructure. This is not the most important, but we give them access to a huge workshop for steel, a huge workshop around steel, around wood, around electronics, around robotics. Our experts have between 5 and 25 years of experience in electronics, robotics, computer-assisted design, computer-assisted manufacturing, etc., etc.
Right.
So the idea is that we are a huge toolbox for any startup or any small or medium company that wants to accelerate a project in hardware, and we've been doing that for the last 3 years.
This is amazing. This is really broad, and this is a little bit some areas where you with Makers Book can tap into as well. Now you said like you support the companies from start to end.
Yeah.
What do you think just pops up in my mind? What is the most difficult area and time for, especially in the hardware?
In hardware, usually the most difficult is not the prototyping. Now, it was quite difficult 10 or 15 years ago, but now because you have expertise, infrastructure, access to technologies that are available on the shelf, prototyping is not that difficult. The main difficulties is scaling. I'm meaning, technically speaking, when you go from the prototyping phase to the manufacturing, dealing with the design for manufacturing, this is the tricky part. How do you go from the prototyping? How do you make the sacrifice around design, around components, to make sure that your product can be scaled, can be manufactured at a high quality and at a low cost? This is quite tricky.
So in that sense, would you say that design for manufacturing can be considered one of the valley of failures for hardware startups?
Yeah, it's really between the phase of this decision, whether or not you are working with a solution house or whether you're going to do it by yourself, and going through the manufacturing. This is really around the design for manufacturing phase. This is for me the trickiest part, not because it's difficult, but because you need to make good choices at that part of the life of your company, and usually the companies don't make the right choice at that point. They don't find the right investors, they don't work with the right solution house, they hire badly, because this is where everything accelerates. When you're doing the prototyping, everything is quite cool because you see your project evolve and so on. But then when you go from the prototyping to the manufacturing, this is not the easiest part, and this is not the funniest part, because there are money issues that arise, and then you begin to work with partners, and this is where you need to do the right choices.
So it's interesting. So and now, jumping from there to Japan, you're here.
Yeah.
You told us you've been visiting different places like DMA Make in Akiba. You will later go and see the Kyoto Makers Garage and so on. So what was your expectation in these areas to Japan, and what do you see now? How is your impression?
Okay. Well, first of all, the objective of this trip was mainly to first of all meet the people that visited us and try to see in Japan what they are actually doing, and there is no better way to see what people are doing than by meeting them and seeing where they work and what they've achieved. Second of all, the idea is to create partnerships, to be able to help the companies that we help in Europe potentially enter the Japanese market or access expertise that is present in Japan and that is not present in Europe. And what I've realized for the last 3 years is that our network and our industrial network and our international industrial network is probably one of the most important value that we bring to our members. To give you an idea, we support around 350 projects every single year. 15% of those projects are based outside of France, but mainly in Europe. And those projects at a certain point need to scale, need to find expertise, need to work with specific people or specific experts, and at that point they need to access those people. And when you are a team of 2 or 3 people in Paris or in Europe, you are by yourself and you need connectors. And what Usine IO is bringing on top of the expertise, the content, the methodology, the project manager, it gives them really access to people they would never access before. It could be Makino, it could be Sabrina, it could be people at Sony Tokyo. This has a huge value in what we bring to our members. So it's extremely important for us to travel to meet the people that counts. And my impression, to answer the second question, is that it's a country that was and still is a pioneer in technology. So what I'm feeling is that it's extremely difficult to meet startups, but it's way easier to meet the people that are working with startups. And the second thing, we've discussed that before, is that the startups from Japan need to go out, need to show off what they're doing, and need not to be shy about what they're doing. And hopefully at a certain point we'll be able to help them also to open the European market whenever they want to access either European expertise or a European specific business market. And this is why I think the talent is here. There are a lot of similarities between France and Japan, and I think a lot of things are going to change in the coming years, the same way things are changing now in France.
Yeah. I have one question for you. You mentioned that you're from Belgium originally.
Yeah.
So even in the French ecosystem, even though you have the language, but there are still some differences. For you as an outsider, what would be the main strength of the French and the Paris ecosystem that is now getting so much attention? You see La French Tech at CES, they are everywhere. What happened in the last 5 years, I would say, that Paris and France became such a IoT hub in the world?
So, first of all, the reason why France is so much talked about is because of the talent. And this is why I saw a lot of similarities with Japan, is that if you look at the talent pool, the talents pool and the talents available in technology, in electronics, in AI, in industrial design, industrial engineering, the pool of talents and the number of people that are experts in those fields in France is huge, and this is clearly the first strength. What has changed during the last 5 to 10 years is quite complex, but if I can list a couple of elements, first of all, a couple of business angels that have decided to invest a huge part of their money inside startups and seed stage startups, so very early on startups. The government decided to give a lot of tax cuts to wealthy people to give them the advantage in investing in SMEs and startups. The government also created a huge amount of incubators, giving the possibility to startups to have an office and to get some money to start on, and that's most of the reason why in the last 5 to 10 years more and more people have been creating startups. And the last part that I didn't mention is that we've seen a huge amount of success stories and international investor going and pouring money into the French ecosystem. All those elements have made France an important, not the most important, but an important hub in terms of IoT and hardware-based, let's say, innovation.
I have my last questions because the big news everywhere was the new co-working space in Paris, apparently the largest in the world. And Station F and Usine IO is one of the players that will be there.
Yeah.
Could you tell us very briefly the role Usine IO is playing there and how you see that this will be useful for your business development in the next few years?
Okay, so Station F is indeed the largest incubator worldwide. It's like 25,000 square meters, exclusively focused on acceleration and incubation of startups, so digital-based and hardware, software-based and digital and hardware-based startups. So we are one of the accelerators that is present inside. And what we felt when we decided to operate an acceleration program over there is that Station F is really a place that will boost the reputation of France, and that will probably attract foreign companies to work there. And this is one of the main objectives of the Station F team, is to attract new type of entrepreneurs and new entrepreneurs that are based in the foreign countries. And by being one of the accelerators in Station F, it gives you we can benefit from that attraction. And we've seen that already, because we've launched the first program that is around connected mobility, seaborne, airborne, and terrestrial. And we already have like 50% of 70% of the application came from outside France, and 50% of the companies that we selected are not based in France. They are based in Switzerland, they are based in Italy, and they were based also in the UK. So for us, Station F will probably give some more strength in terms of international visibility, and that's probably what was lacking for the French ecosystem.
All right. So you're coming, and you also at Usine IO, you're also providing the space for the startups you support to work on. And I've been to different places in Europe as well, and I see some very strong differences with co-working spaces here in Japan. We talked about it before, so what is your feeling? What do you see here? What are you missing a little bit in terms of co-working shared spaces?
The main difference is really that every single incubation or acceleration space that you can see in France, but in other places in Europe, is that it's very open, and the way it's opened is like most of the incubators accelerator are based on the floor level, so meaning on the street level. What I've seen for the last couple of days is that Japan is not doing it the same way, and that's a shame, because I do believe that people need to see where innovation is happening, and that is one of the reasons, because in theory there is no reason why you would put an incubator at the floor level, but actually it gives some kind of openness to the space that is quite important, and I think that we're going to see changing in Japan as well, and I hope that it
we already have Kyoto Makers Garages on the street level.
Kyoto Makers Garages on the street level, so that's kind of important, because inspiration is one of the most important things in terms of innovation.
Yes.
People need to see where innovation happens, and people need to see success stories. So you need to be inspired to launch a company, and having incubators and acceleration and platforms of innovation, let's say, open to the street and open to the people, is quite important. So it doesn't seem to be, but it is.
I can imagine it can be a driver. Like, I mean, you have all these business people or just workers every day crossing the streets, but they never think about this. They might never have heard about what is incubation, what are startups.
Yeah.
I mean, we are right in it, but so of course we're aware of everything, but there are people that have never heard of this. So if you see, maybe you check it out, or you go, and if it's more open, it's more accessible, and might invite them to join or to start their own company, or to reconsider their positions and lives.
Indeed.
For me, I think now Gary is probably excited to go and visit Kyoto
Yes.
for the first time.
I am.
Great. Great. Then thank you very much, Gary, for visiting us. Thank you for this interview. And
Thank you for having me.
maybe real quick, if anyone wants to reach out to you and learn more about Usine
It's
IO.
It's extremely easy. It's extremely easy. You just send an email to hello@usine.io, and you ask for Gary, or you ask for anyone, and we'll be happy to give you more information about what we do. And if in case we can help, and in case you can become a member, we would be extremely happy to help you and to open up our network for you.
Especially Japanese are crazy about berries. I've been to Usine IO, was very impressed. not only about the facilities, but how open and connected their communities seem to be. So I think in that sense will be inspired for Japanese to go and visit your space.
You're always welcome.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. If you are whether in Japan or around the globe, Usine IO, I have to work on this, is open to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we are back again. That was a very interesting interview. And well, I was, as I said, it was very spontaneous for me, but I was happy that Gary took the time to actually sit with us, present his company, present Usine IO, and talk about topics such as what we mentioned, the co-working spaces and his experience with co-working spaces. His feedback, he would love to see more spaces with better accessibility. Means most of spaces here in Japan tend to end up sort of in some floors, 5th, 6th, 7th of some fancy buildings, business buildings, which is a little bit against the idea. It's just, it makes them a little bit hidden away, not so approachable, and that's one thing that actually co-working spaces benefit from diversity of people joining, right? So you can exchange. How was your experience here in Kansai with co-working space in general? I mean, now you have one basically running.
Kyoto Makers Garages is totally open, street level. It's a garage basically. It's in a street that we have a lot of people, not necessarily the target we are looking for right now, because the area is still not the main area for students and makers, but we believe in the next few years it might become. Next year there will be Kyotography, the photography event organized by some French artists with local Kyoto universities, I guess, and I think there are a few other players involved, and they are considering to have part of their art exhibition in our area, because that's a street level. You can see out of, like, far away, you can see, and the way the building was designed by Benoit, a French architect from Yokkaiso, is that to make sure that it would be accessible from the main street. So everyone who's passing by is welcome to open and enter and check without any charges or any problems, and that's part of our vision for the place. It should be a makerspace for anyone who'd like to learn new skills, either about entrepreneurship or startups or makers. And also, as we hosted 2 days before, Maker Tour. It's a group of French entrepreneurs traveling the world to document maker spaces and also share the possibilities and expand the reach of collaboration and cooperation between makers and maker spaces. They realized that having such a hub is a core need for any startup ecosystem to develop solutions. So they showcase 3 different examples in India, in Barcelona, and I think in Singapore, of startups or startup related projects that started as just a hobby.
But that's exactly the idea, right? Makerspaces are made so, as I said in the beginning, like you have this effect of when you sit alone at home, you work from home, or you work in a very isolated, like kind of like business center, even if it's an open shared office. You need that interaction. Interactions can spark new ideas, discussions, and that's when that's when the magic happens.
What I miss mostly in Kansai, especially Kyoto, we have 38 universities and institutes of technology, but they are all spread around, which means students tend to stick to their own group. So you see engineers with engineers, business students with business, and designers with designers, which is good, but at a certain point they should meet. And currently they don't meet at university because usually the faculties are far from each other. They have, everything's arranged in a way they don't meet. So we want to be the place where coincidentally They will meet, they will start talking and learning about each other and exchanging information, skills, and maybe doing things in a workshop or in a meetup, and sparkling the entrepreneurship spirit.
Magic.
Yeah.
Well, no, anyway, but yeah, you're right, definitely. And there are actually more and more such like co-working spaces, not all hidden away, as you mentioned in the beginning, but in the Kansai area, for instance, and you can find some of them, most of them, or many of them documented in the Hakka News Kansai scrapbox, scrapbox.io/HN Kansai. We have there maybe already 30 entries of co-working spaces, some of them flashed out by the members with like details about pricing and so on, which is in general in Japan. I did a quick overview. It's like the daily drop-in prices tend to be around 1,000 to 2,000 yen, which is about maybe $10 to $15, and monthly prices are around, what was it, maybe 10 to 20,000, which is around $150 to $200, I would say. Most of them, of course, there are some outliers which are more expensive or even cheaper, depending on what kind of plan you choose. It changes then as well. Like some have like only the drop-in desks, some have like reservation for desks or the private rooms, right, and so on. But which is actually a pretty okay price. I checked in Europe. In Europe, they're around 200 euros monthly price with like drop-in, maybe about 10.
It depends where you go.
It depends. No,
I would say Paris and Berlin is way cheaper than that. Usine IO prices.
No, that's these are the location. I quickly checked. It depends, like on what plan to choose. I mean, like the average. What I was surprised is, and what people have been telling before, is that the States in America very expensive.
Depending on where you are, of course.
In the hubs
of startups, but then again, the wages there are quite high, so everything, real estate is more expensive, and the places that are going to be expensive to hire, to rent an apartment, will be expensive to use a co-working space for sure.
What do you think? Where was the first kind of like co-working space located, opened up, and when it was? Like no co-working space as we know it these days. Of course, co-working, the concept has been around for always, right? I mean, humans tend to work together. Whatever that means.
I would guess, well, my first guess in terms of like how society is organized, I would say somewhere in France.
Close enough. It was actually, if you look it up, and it was on the page is called, real quick, deskmag.com. They have a history of co-working spaces. Very interesting read, and they have other material and great links. So they say, first, kind of like co-working space, 1995 in Berlin.
Wow.
Called Seabase Station. Look that up. The name has a very funny backstory actually. One of the first hacker spaces in the world. And they are also behind some great initiatives like it was called Berlin Backbone Project, which was an initiative to make Wi-Fi and internet accessible for free for everyone.
Wow, amazing. Berlin.
1995. And the project was then in 2002, I think. From there, things moved a little bit slowly. 1999, you had some like popping up words like co-working and some spaces opening up, New York City, Vienna, and then the one place that really kind of like fundamented the name, the brand co-working space was then in of course in San Francisco in 2005 by Brad Neuberg. Sorry, this is the German. No, how do you say it in English? How would you pronounce it in American? Brad Neuberg?
Yeah, of course.
No, it's Neuberg.
Oh my god, okay.
Apologies for that. As a reaction to all these like not very social business centers, and the other extreme would be like sitting at home as a freelancer, right? Where you're very limited to your four walls, no interaction. So he started to organize this first co-working space, and that's still considered the kind of like mother and reference for everything we have now. From then on, 2006, 2005, 2007, 12, 13, it doubled every year up to 2013, and which is pretty impressive. So it started not too long ago, and now we have it here in Japan, everywhere. Very different ones, some very, I would say business styles ones, like corporate style, with like cubicles and everything, and then you have some very essential ones where just desks are inside, and then there are others like fancy interiors, kind of like inspired by all these Google spaces, right, and so on.
But I would at least, considering Japanese early adopters in co-working spaces, it tends to be more shared office. So you basically just drop in and use this desk, but not necessarily in a co-working that people don't work together. They just share the same table, but they don't necessarily interrupt each other.
Yeah, that's the point. I think it's more a mindset thing now. So in Japan, depending on the numbers you look up, you have about 17% of the whole workforce are freelancers, like creatives as well as
programmers.
Yeah, and so on. They just look for a space to do their work and not necessarily maybe to interact or to start something. They just execute their task, their work they have.
Yeah, because I think that's also a very trend between remote workers. So I've read some recent news about the movement of remote workers being called back to work from back to their offices, because apparently not all projects or functions or job descriptions actually are so effective when you're working remotely. Some of the jobs still require a lot of teamwork, working together. That would save time and efforts to communicate your basic ideas by emails or communication tools you might be using working remotely. But I think that the flexibility is the most important, and having the choice to work from where you would feel more productive or where you could get more inspired to finish your work is very, very important. And in that sense, Japan is a little behind the rest of the world. At least from traditional companies, or unless you are a startup or as a freelancer or SMEs, you don't have that freedom to do home office or to work from a co-working space or a cafe where you feel more inspired maybe to work on a cool presentation for an event. You know, it's still a little bit the culture of being in the office and being seen from 9 to 6 or 9 to 9 depending on the kind of job.
Great. And before we round up this topic here, I found the numbers. Just to quickly announce, they say here, I don't know, the sources are not linked, but 2013 in July there was like the 3,000th co-working space was opened globally, and that was like 3-4 years ago.
Oh, we still have some more here in Kyoto. Since I joined Kyoto, I moved to Kyoto, I would say the number of co-working space has increased maybe like 10 times.
Yes.
Because in 2016 we had the first remote year. It's an American startup that has that offers traveling with co-working spaces combined with experiences. We had them in Kyoto for 1 month in January 2016. This October they are back with a new group, but then their options for their own group has multiplied by at least 10, so there are over 10 co-working spaces in Kyoto that would now be willing or open or could offer that kind of experience. They are telling flexibility. Some of them have showers or have pods or places you can just take a nap and so on. So I think in that sense Japan has been took a while to start following the trend, but now
people are like just
it's
everywhere.
And I think with the amount of tourists that are also sometimes remote workers, freelancers, bloggers, they really need that kind of space, and I think it's very good.
Great. In case you're a traveler, you're planning a trip to Kansai, means Kyoto, Kobe, Osaka, and you look for co-working spaces, feel free to contact us. And in general, if anyone has any question, let us know. and feedback is welcome as well. And with that, we're at the end of this show. It has been a very long one, actually. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you, Sabrina, for joining me.
Thank you, Tugi, for inviting me over. Hope I can make it to the next one as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Habitat Update Episode 6, the podcast about entrepreneurs in Japan, based in the Kansai area of Japan, with Kobe, Osaka, and Kyoto as major cities. This podcast goes live on YouTube as a video. Hello. And as an audio-only version on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts, iTunes, every 2 weeks. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Bye-bye. Thank you.